Now that we're a full month into this 2026 NHL season, I wanted to compile my biggest takeaways from the year so far. Obviously, still a lot of hockey yet to be played, but I want to compile my biggest thoughts so far on the year to see which of them might end up translating throughout the rest of the season. So make sure you guys watch till the end as we go through my biggest takeaways of the season so far, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this all throughout the year. But let's get the takeaways started here, and at number 1, my first big impression of the season so far, Greg Cronin, pardon my French, sucked major booty. I don't think there's a coach that looks worse after the start of this season than former Anaheim Ducks coach Greg Cronin, who I think in a lot of ways was just driving that Ducks team into the ground. But you guys can see now that Joel Quenneville has been hired, the position the Ducks are in early on, where through 12 games, they are 8-3-1 and 9th in the entire NHL. The thing is, they could still end up missing the playoffs, sure, whatever. But the biggest thing to me is that Anaheim is fun again. This was a team that was so fun a few years ago with so much interesting young talent, but they just haven't been utilized properly in such a long time. Now you are starting to see them actually flourish in a major way, and I don't think that's much of a coincidence. Cutter Gauthier so far, 10 goals, 16 points through 12 games. Leo Carlsson has hit a different level so far this season, 18 points in 12 games for him. Him and Gauthier have really worked well together recently, but Beckett Seneca has come in as a rookie, has actually got an opportunity to play, which I don't think would have been the case under Cronin, and so far has 7 points, 4 goals through 12 games. Troy Terry, something that I think was really dumped in the Cronin system, has been unbelievable so far, and I think has gone back to the level we know he's capable of. 15 points in 12 games, though, is a rock star start, and I'm really happy for him personally. But even outside of the younger players, you've gotten really great results out of some of the older players they have recently acquired. Chris Kreider, of course, is a big one from the offseason, who I thought would be a very good fit in Anaheim for a team that needed a boost on the power play. Kreider has certainly given them that. 7 goals and 8 points through 8 games. Never change, Chris. But the biggest surprise to most, and including me, is the resurgence of Jacob Trouba. Can we talk about this for a second? This guy has been unbelievable. Somebody that I was really down on in his later times with New York, and even last year, I don't think he was very good with Anaheim whatsoever, getting 8 points in 53 games, but he's already matched that point total so far through 12 games with 3 goals and 8 points, but also defensively isn't playing horrible, which is a welcome surprise as well. And really almost every single guy is being played to their advantages. Maybe one guy in Frank Vetrano isn't playing very well, but I think you can excuse that when the rest of the roster is breaking out pretty much in unison. I am so desperately hoping that this Ducks team is not another one that starts off great and then falls off in December, because the NHL deserves a fun Ducks team, and so far they delivered. On to my second takeaway for the season so far. Let's go on to the JJ Peterka trade, and honestly, I think it continues to be true. I think the Sabres got very sneaky value in this deal. Now, this was something that I questioned at the time because I actually did like the return for Buffalo, but of course, we had to see how it would play out, at least to start out the season. And so far, although I think it's been a pretty solid win-win for both teams, I think especially for Buffalo, if you're just looking at pure value, I think they did extraordinarily well here. Of course, Peterka is the best and most skilled player in this deal at 23 years old, being a good point producer so far, and so far through 13 games, 4 goals, 10 points, hasn't lit the world on fire with Utah, but it's been a big part of that second line, and the chemistry with him and Logan Cooley, and also Dylan Guenther, has been really fun to watch, so I think for Utah, they'll definitely take it. But I do think, looking at what Buffalo got, it's pretty interesting here because Josh Doan is pretty similar, not just in the production, but I would argue in the overall game, Doan far clears what Peterka has done so far. Now, to me, a lot of the value from this deal was coming from Michael Kesselring. We'll talk about him in a second, but Doan has been the major surprise. I thought he'd be a really solid middle six for checking forward. He does a lot of the dirty work, does a lot of the hard working there, and gets the job done. But Doan has done a really good job at elevating his play already with Buffalo, getting a big opportunity and really running away with it so far. 9 points, 4 goals through 13 games. But in terms of the intensity, the work ethic, the consistent play in Doan, I would argue there's not been a more consistent Sabre this season than him. And that's high praise for somebody that just entered this system this year. And we haven't even got to the big right shot defenseman that Buffalo also acquired in Michael Kesselring, mostly because he's been injured to start out the year, has gone back into game action just recently, playing 4 games, getting 0 points. But the value when it comes to Kesselring to me is how well he eats minutes, how quiet he can be defensively, how much he uses that body well and can make the first pass out of his zone. Nothing that's exceptional or anything, but I think adds to wins in the end. And especially for a team like Buffalo that has long struggled on that right side, Kesselring, I think, will be a key component. On to my third takeaway so far, we go on to some good news for Utah. And my third takeaway is that if they are healthy, the Utah Mammoth are absolutely nasty. This was my hope. This was my dream for Utah last year and also this year, predicting them to make the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. It didn't work out very well last year, but this year it's starting to come together. Right now, 5th in the NHL with a 9-4-0 record. Granted, there are still some things they might need to work out, but I think in terms of the chemistry that they've started to build this season, it's been some really good progression for them. And the depth, I think, has also been some major improvements as well, with guys like Larson Krause starting to get better as well over the course of the season. But of course, the top-end guys, Keller has been fantastic. Schmaltz has had a unbelievable contract season, but that second line of Peterka, Cooley, and Gunther, how much fun those guys have been, how much they've been able to get to early leads in these games recently, they've just been a ton of fun. And that's also about Vejmelka playing fantastically as their starter. He has an .894 save percentage, which is fine, but certainly can be improved upon. And once that does, I think Utah could really benefit from that. And that record maybe could even improve. Who knows? On to my fourth takeaway of the season so far. Let's go on to the Chicago Blackhawks. And my fourth takeaway is that the Blackhawks have their starter of the now and the future as well. Let's talk about Spencer Knight, because he was something that I was down on a little bit heading into last season with Florida, but since the trade to Chicago, it seems like that's the kind of mental butt kicking that he maybe needed and has seized the opportunity with the Blackhawks up to this point. The talent, the potential was always there as the 13th overall pick, something that with Florida was destined to become the starter until they signed Bobrovsky pretty much immediately. But at 24 years old, I really wanted to see him take that next step, because with the Blackhawks last year, he had an .896 save percentage, but had some really big, great moments for them that you could see the potential starting to come out after having a .907 save percentage with Florida as well. But this year, he's been fantastic, has a .913 save percentage, a 2.62 goals against average in 9 games, and considering Chicago's workload thrust upon him, some mistakes here and there in the defensive end, I think Knight has done incredible. And if we're just going off of goals saved above expected, what the save percentage should look like on a normal contender, he'd be around a .920 save percentage, absolutely. Currently, though, he's only behind Lucas Dostal in goals saved above expected among all NHL goalies and has really stepped up his play. On to my fifth takeaway of the NHL season so far. The Calgary Flames just need to rebuild, man. It's over. Granted, it might not be completely over. They might still want to make the playoffs, and ownership quotes have come out how they want to still be a competitive team, but that's just not the reality of Calgary. I get they've been close, but the Flames, it seems like perpetually always just want to be 15th best in the NHL, and it honestly pisses me off. The Flames have never, ever in their franchise history had a top 3 pick. This team is so clearly not very great. They might be okay, better than their horrible start, but it's just not the level you want for an even playoff team. Even if they make it, you need a miraculous Dustin Wolff surge to even win a game. But I think the Flames need to see the writing on the wall, because their prospect pool has been really good over the past couple of seasons. They've drafted some really interesting talent, but they're not really going to be in a position to play them if they keep trying to force this contending status upon this team. It's just not the reality of the situation. I don't think they have to completely tear down every single piece of the studs, but at least go in a retool here and try to make some more moves like they did a couple of years ago, because I think that worked out pretty well for them. I just want to see them get a top talent, man, on top of some pretty interesting talent already there in Zane Parekh, because I think that Flames organization, that franchise, that fan base does deserve that type of talent, and it's just not there right now. Moving on to takeaway number 6. This one makes me quite a bit happy. Nick Suzuki is a top tier center in this league, folks, and I think you just need to accept it. Now, I think top 8 is probably the highest he ends up, just because the center quality is so good in this league. I would probably put him now ahead of a player like Austin Matthews, but probably not ahead of Jack Eichel or Crosby or of course Draisaitl, McDavid, McKinnon, the top end of the top end. But I think Suzuki has entered that tier, even if it might be at the later half. It might seem crazy for some folks, but I don't really think it should. I think Suzuki has really proven himself as not just one of the best leaders in the NHL off the ice, but on the ice as well. So far through 13 games, has 3 goals, 16 assists for 19 points, among the league leaders in points again after a fantastic season last year, getting 89 points in 82 games. He's not just factoring into major goals, he's also factoring into great defensive plays. With a minute to go, he's blocking shots and forcing the puck out, using that IQ in every single way, every single component of the game. game, and I think he's really been continuing to elevate his game year after year, but this season is again where he's fully cementing it. On to my 7th takeaway of the season so far. This is one that you probably could say for years now, but I just think the Rangers need a shakeup in a massive way. They kind of did that a little bit, and they've kind of been doing it over the past years, trying to trade piece after piece, trying to make these interesting moves in the middle of the lineup, but I just don't think they can continue to do that because they've just continued to find middling results year after year now, and 14 games in are 6-6-2, continue to be an absolute just dumpster fire at MSG. It's one thing if you were Vegas and the results, the winning, the division wins were there, but the Rangers are just mid. The results aren't even there for all this cutthroat action. It's resulted in nothing, and that's kind of just how I felt about this Rangers era. Nothing. Let's move back on to the positives here and go into my 8th takeaway of the season, and I want to talk about Moritz Seider here because I think with Detroit starting off pretty well this season, there's some big reasons as to why. Players like Dylan Larkin have been fantastic, the emergence of Emmett Finney, Ben Sherratt hasn't been completely horrible, but I think Moritz Seider has really, truly hit a different level now. Granted, the points aren't going to be the reason why. He's never going to be, in my opinion, an amazing point producer, but 6 points through 14 games ain't the worst in the world. The reason I'm talking about Seider here today, though, is just how much more comfortable he feels this season, how much more life it seems like he has, but also just the defensive and physical play that Seider has always been the best at. It's just continued to improve, continue to get better, and this year is where we're starting to see, I think, the results come. Currently, he's 3rd in expected goals against per 60 on Detroit, really just carrying the load defensively, playing the 5th most minutes in the entire NHL in terms of average time on ice. Seider has been thrown to the Wolves again, but now it's seeming like he's really starting to get comfortable with those minutes, which is huge for Detroit. With some of the younger defensemen like Axel Sandin Palika and Simon Edvinsson having some iffy moments to start out the season, I think Seider's dominance defensively, which isn't a surprise necessarily, but it's just great to see. I always thought he was good in the minutes he played, but because he was playing so many minutes and so many tough minutes, it was hard to dominate those minutes. Now I think he's truly taking it over, and I think for the Red Wings, that defense has been changed because of that. On to my penultimate takeaway of the day. Let's go on to Bo Horvat, and another player I wanted to highlight here today, because my goodness, Bo Horvat still has that dog in him. And I am super happy to see this. I mean, a lot of the talk around the Islanders has been about Matthew Schaefer, of course, and rightfully so. But I think one player that has really surprised me for just how dominant they have been has been Bo Horvat. And especially recently, the goal scoring streak has been unbelievable to watch. So far through 13 games, 9 goals, 15 points up to this point, and that's at a pretty good level. I mean, obviously the shooting percentage is going to be a bit inflated for sure, but the positions that Horvat is putting himself in, how much synergy he's starting to feel with that Islanders lineup, he's been a big reason, I think, for some of their underlying success. I've always thought that Horvat has been a pretty underrated player with the Islanders. Yes, he hasn't hit the unbelievable 54 points in 49 games level with Vancouver, but he's been a very solid player for a long time, especially in the goal scoring department. 33 goals in 2024 and almost 30 goals in 2025. But this year it seems like he's getting back to that top tier peak Vancouver level, which for the Islanders is huge, especially considering he's still only 30 years old. He's not super old, so he still has a lot of time to be able to play at a great level, and so far he has. On to the last takeaway for today, and another one that makes me pretty happy here. Is the Blue Jackets goaltending not actually dead? Now, this one is a bit of a shame because the Blue Jackets goaltending has been pretty great so far. Both Elvis Merzlikins and Jet Greaves are top 15 in goals hit above expected and putting up some pretty good numbers in the save percentage department. So far, Merzlikins a .917 save percentage through 6 games, and Jet Greaves also playing well as a 24-year-old, a .916 save percentage through 6 games, and that similar tier as well to Merzlikins. Greaves isn't the most surprising considering he had a really good end of the season last year, and I was pretty high on him entering the season as an underrated one for the Blue Jackets. But Merzlikins actually putting up some pretty good numbers is shocking considering we haven't really seen that since at least 2022, and I would argue since 2021 really we've seen him at a good level. But Merzlikins is actually back to form a little bit so far, which couldn't happen to a better person. Merzlikins has really needed this for a long time now, and I'm hoping this is able to continue. It's a bit of a shame because this Blue Jackets team has been a bit inconsistent, especially on the offensive end, so they haven't had a fantastic record so far, currently 7-5. But if last year's team even got a save or two from Merzlikins instead of what they got last year, they would have been a playoff team. But hey, better late than never, I guess. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, of course, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe and notification bell. Comment down below your thoughts on my takeaways, guys? What did you guys agree with? What did you guys disagree with? And what would be your biggest takeaway from the NHL season up to this point? If you guys want some more videos, you can become a member here today by hitting the join button next to the subscribe button, or hitting the link in the description down below. And for a couple bucks a month, you get exclusive videos every single week on top of exclusive emoji to use and exclusive member polls as well that you guys can be a part of. So I highly appreciate that. And the names of all the members will be up here on the screen. Big shout outs to all you guys. But you guys can also click up here if you want some ranking content if you might have missed that. But that's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.